Hello dear students, good morning. How are you? Good. Enjoying your time, enjoying your days, enjoying your academics. Myself, Rajesh Dadich, your mentor in English from Shivjyoti Educational Group, Kota. So students, today we are going to discuss your last short stories of your curriculum in the book Woven Words, and that is your sixth short story, the third and final continent by Jhumpa Lahiri. Okay, this is a very interesting but very easy chapter. So I hope you will not come across any kind of doubts, any kind of problems. You will better get it, right? Before we proceed, let me explain the title of the chapter. The third and final continent. Third, clearly expressed from this title that we are means the author is going to discuss and we are going to learn about three continents, three countries. We can call them three countries. What they are, let us see. India, UK and USA. And if you are good at geography, you will naturally find that all these three countries are in three different continents. America, you know well, UK, you know well, and India, of course, Asia, right? So we can say Asia, Europe and America. So three continents we are going to discuss about. Actually the story is very simple. The main character of this story is Jhumpa Lahiri's father, right? Her father, she has mentioned her father, her mother and herself as the child character in this chapter. Okay. Jhumpa Lahiri, the author says that her father, actually in 1964, the main character of this chapter, I left India, means he left for Britain, he left for the UK in 1964 for job. He got a job over there and he became a librarian, and being a Bengali over there means in the UK also he was living in the community of the Bengalis. Okay, so he was quite comfortable over there. He was doing his job and he became a librarian over there. Then in the due course of time, as he was applying for different jobs pan world, so he got a job in Boston. Boston is in America, let me tell you. Boston is in America. He got a job of librarian over there, but at the same time, coincidentally, he got engaged and his marriage was fixed. His arranged marriage was fixed. So at the same time, he had to book his flight for Calcutta. At the time it was known as Calcutta, but now Kolkata, right, of 60s. So he got back to India, got married, and his wife is Mala. He spent a few days with Mala and then he flies back to Boston, America to join his new job as a librarian. Okay, and despite being married, he did not take his wife because her papers, means visa, passport, like these documentation was not proper, was not complete. So he had to go all alone by himself for around 3 weeks. So he went over there, he got settled, and I mean to say, he just took his accommodation at YMCA. YMCA means Young Men's Christian Association. He got room, and at the same time he was searching for private lodging also, and he got a job and he got his lodging also, and his new landlady was Mrs. Croft. Then we'll learn later, but this is enough for you. Okay, and the third and final continent, what does it mean? Means finally the main character, protagonist, the author, here this main character got finally settled in the USA. Now, what does this title mean? This means we are going to learn different cultures and civilization of 3 continents. Means in what way the author, this main character, gets acclimatized, get accustomed to the rituals, to the customs, traditions of India, Britain, and then USA. There is much difference between the customs and traditions of the USA and the UK. So, this all we are going to learn. In what way he gets adjusted himself. Let us read. I left India in 1964 with a certificate in commerce and the equivalent in those days of $10 to my name. For 3 weeks I sailed on the SS Roma ship, an Italian cargo vessel, in a 3rd class cabin, being poor, being an average middle class family, and next to the ship's engine he got himself settled across the Arabian Sea, the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. These 3 seas are there. It means he is crossing 3 continents maybe. So, and finally to England, means the UK. I lived in North London in Finsbury Park in a house occupied entirely by penniless Bengali, means poor Bengalis were there. So, being poor and being Bengali, he was also feeling quite comfortable while being with the Bengalis of his own status. Bengali bachelors like myself, at least a dozen and sometimes more, all struggling to educate and establish ourselves abroad. Some people were getting settled over there, and some people were joining there, and some were leaving because of job or marriage, right. I attended lectures at the LSE and worked at the university library to get by, to support himself. We lived 3 or 4 to a room, shared a single icy toilet, and took turns cooking pots of egg curry, which we ate with our hands on a table covered with newspapers. Students, in these lines, the lifestyle of bachelors has been clearly depicted, and it arouses interest in us, and in this way this story becomes very interesting, and the language is very simple. You can see, apart from our jobs, we had few responsibilities. On weekends, we lounged barefoot in drawstring, pyjamas, pyjamas and some strings are there, drinking tea and smoking Rothmans, or set out to watch cricket at Lord's, one of the great cricket ground. Some weekends, the house was command with still more Bengalis, to whom we had introduced ourselves at the greengrocer or on the tube, and we made yet more egg curry. Sometimes we had already prepared egg curry for us, and we were about to consume our meals, but all of a sudden some newcomers maybe might join us, and then we had to prepare some more curry. Okay. So, and played Mukesh on a grinding reel to reel and soaked our dirty dishes in the bathtub. Every now and then someone in the house moved out to live with a woman, means someone got married and new person came and the previous person left. Reasons may vary from person to person, whom his family back in Calcutta had determined he was to wed, he was to get married. In 1969, when I was in my early 30s, when I was 36 years old, means early 30s we may call, my own marriage was arranged, and around the same time I was offered a full-time job in America in the processing department of a library at MIT. Students, what is MIT? Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Okay, this is one of the great technology colleges of the world. The salary was generous enough to support a wife, and I was honored to be hired by a world famous university and so I obtained a sixth preference green card and prepared to travel farther still. So in this way, I got a job. By now, I had enough money to go by plane, means I had to go back to Calcutta to get married, and now I had earned little enough to support my airfare. Right, I flew first to Calcutta to attend my wedding, and a week later I flew first to Boston to begin my new job. During the flight, I read the Student Guide to North America. Students, whenever we are going somewhere for the very first time, we are just curious to know about the tradition, culture of that place. So the author, the main character, also thought it better to go through the guide so that he may be familiarized. He may be familiar with traditions and customs and places to visit over there in America. So he went through this Student Guide to North America, a paperback volume that I had bought before leaving London, because 7 shillings 6 pence on Tottenham Court Road. For although I was no longer a student, now I was no longer a student, I was a working person, right? I was on a budget all the same. I learned that Americans drove on the right side of the road. This is one of the differences. You know, in India, we just prefer to drive to the left, but they drive to the right, not the left, and that they call a lift an elevator. You know, in India we call lift, but they call it elevator. And you know, we call biscuits and they call biscuit, they call cookies, we call french fries, they call different names, right? Finger chips, like so many differences are there. Elevator. And an engaged phone, busy, means whenever in India we are not able to connect properly, engaged beep sound is there, so we say this is engage, right? Phone engage ja raha hai, right? Something like that we speak. But in America they keep saying the phone is busy, the phone is busy. The piece of life in North America, this is the continent. Now you have got it. North America, South America, these two continents are there out of 7, is different from Britain, as you will soon discover in what way. The difference is there, you will soon discover in the chapter. The guidebook informed me, everybody feels he must get to the top. Don't expect an English cup of tea. Okay. As the plane began its descent, means it was coming down, means it was just landing over Boston Harbor, that city, airport. The pilot announced the weather and time, and that President Nixon, at the time, students, in the year 1969, the President of America was Mr. Nixon, and at that same time America made an achievement, you know, in the space. So America got successful by landing a few spacemen, a few astronauts on the surface of the moon, and they were, for the very first time they had landed in the history of mankind, and they were Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin and Michael Collins. These 3 Americans became successful people who landed first, who stepped first on the surface of the moon. So that good announcement of achievement was made by the president of the time, Mr. Nixon, and that's why it was declared a holiday for them, national holiday for them. Okay, so Nixon had declared a national holiday. 2 American men had landed on the moon. Several passengers cheered, and they all were saying, God bless America, yay, hooray. In this way they all were celebrating. God bless America. One of them hollered across the aisle. Ale is the same corridor or gallery type. On both sides seats are there, and the common passage between 2 rows is known as aisle, right? So across the aisle I saw a woman praying. A woman was praying over there. I spent my first night at the YMCA, Young Men's Christian Association, in Central Square, Cambridge, at inexpensive accommodation. It was quite cheap, right? Recommended by my guidebook. So it was walking distance from MIT, that institute, and steps away from the post office and a supermarket called purity supreme. So in this way, this has been mentioned just to show that the author, the main character, was quite comfortable while being over there in his first few days. The room contained a cot. What was there in the room? In that YMCA, a cot was there, a desk, and a small wooden cross on one wall. A sign on the door said cooking was strictly prohibited, means forbidden. That was means cooking was not allowed. A bare window overlooked Massachusetts Avenue, this premises, and a major thoroughfare. Common path was there with traffic in both directions. To and fro, vehicles were moving. Everybody was busy. Okay, car horns, shrill and prolonged, blared one after another. In this way, he is saying he is trying to depict the city life. This lifestyle is quite different from that of India. Flashing sirens heralded endless emergencies, and a fleet of buses rumbled past, their doors opening and closing with a powerful haze. Throughout the night, atmosphere was not peaceful. The writer wants to say. The noise was constantly distracting, at times suffocating. I felt it deep in my ribs. Just means he was not feeling comfortable because of this noisy atmosphere. Just as I had felt the furious drone of the engine on the SS Roma. This is the ship on which he had come over there, right? So on the engine side, he took his place. We have already learned in the beginning, but there was no ship's deck to escape to, no glittering ocean to thrill my soul, no breeze to cool my face. Means all these things he came across while being on the ship, okay, when he left India. No one to talk to. I was too tired to pace the gloomy corridors of the YMCA. The lifestyle was quite boring to the writer, okay. I was YMCA in my drawstring pajamas. Instead, I sat at the desk and stared out the window at the City Hall of Cambridge and a row of small shops. In the morning, I reported to my job at the Dual Library, a beige fort-like building. A fort-like building was there, and this is about exterior, right? Exterior of the building means you may call how it was looking like, right? Building by Memorial Drive. I also opened a bank account, rented a post office box, temporary post office box he rented, and bought a plastic bowl and a spoon at Woolworth's store, whose name I recognized from London. I went to Purity Supreme, wandering up, means moving here and there, up and down the aisles, converting ounces to grams and comparing. You know, students, in India, grams are used, but over there in America, ounces term is used. It also shows the difference, okay. So he bought a small carton of milk and a box of cornflakes. This was my first meal in America. I ate it at my desk. I preferred it to hamburgers or hot dogs, the only alternative I could afford in the coffee shops on Massachusetts Avenue. And besides, at the time, I had yet to consume any beef, means non-veg, okay. Even the simple core of buying milk, core means task of buying milk was new to me, because while being in India, he never went out, he never bothered to go out to buy milk. But in America, he himself had to go out. In London, we had bottles delivered each morning to our door. This is the difference, okay. In India, milk is supplied at home. In Britain, milk bottles are delivered outside our home, and in America, no such kind of services are provided, but one has to go out to buy milk. This is also one of the differences. In a week, I had adjusted one more or less. I ate cornflakes and milk morning and night, and bought some bananas for variety, slicing them into the bowl with the edge of my spoon. In this way, taste was to be changed. In addition, I bought tea bags and a flask, which the salesman in Wordsworth, this is the departmental store, like he went over there for petty shoppings. referred to as a thermos. You know, in India we call thermos, but over there it is known as flask. He informed me was used to store whiskey. Another thing, I had never consumed whiskey, but he told that I can use this thermos or flask for this purpose also. For the price of 1 cup of tea at a coffee shop, I filled the flask with boiling water on my way to work each morning. Actually, he didn't have enough money. That's why instead of coffee, while sitting at the table, he used to consume hot water which he stored in the flask. Okay. I filled the flask with boiling water on my way to work each morning and brewed the 4 cups I drank in the course of a day. I bought a larger carton of milk and learned to leave it on the shaded part of the window sill. Window frame is known as window sill, as I had seen another resident at the YMCA do. Actually, I didn't know how to manage, but one day I noticed somebody doing like this, so I also tried to copy that. Okay. So to pass the time in the evening, I read the Boston Globe downstairs in the spacious room with stained glass windows. I read every article and advertisement so that I would grow familiar with things, and in this way I was going through newspapers, in this way I was going through articles to get used to all these things, and when my eyes grew tired, I slept. Only I did not sleep well. Each night I had to keep the window wide open. It was the only source of air in the stifling room, means suffocating room. And the noise was intolerable. They could not tolerate this noise. I would lie on the cot with my fingers pressed into my ears, but when I drifted off to sleep, my hands fell away and the noise of the traffic would actually, while putting my hands into my ears, so I was disturbed too much because of the noisy traffic, but all of a sudden my hands were removed and would wake me up again, and pigeon feathers drifted onto the window sill, and one evening when I poured milk over, very picture like description has been given and in a very easy language. So students, I don't think you have any kind of doubt in understanding. Okay. I poured milk over my cornflakes. I saw that it had soured. Nevertheless, I resolved to stay at the YMCA for 6. It had soured means when the milk turns sour, means doodh phat jana. So it got soured. I didn't mind until my wife's passport and green card were ready. So have you got it now? Why his wife Mala could not accompany him to the USA? Because her passport, visa like formalities were not complete. Okay. Once she arrived, I would have to rent a proper apartment, and so from time to time I studied the classified section of the newspaper. Actually, he was just trying to find a private accommodation so that he might bring his wife over there and could live with her peacefully and comfortably. So in the meantime, he came across an advertisement, or stopped in at the housing office at MIT during my lunch break to see what was available in my price range, means in my affordability. It was in this manner that I discovered somehow the writer got success in finding a room. He discovered a room because immediate occupancy, means the landlord or landlady wanted immediate occupancy, so he decided to go over there to contact in a house on a quiet street. The listing said, means in that advertisement it was mentioned that for $8 per week, this was the rent, and I copied the number into my guidebook and dialed from a pay telephone, means public booth, sorting through the coins with which I was still unfamiliar. Actually, some coins are to be dropped to make a call. In India also, in metro cities, but olden times it used to be, but now almost everybody, even a rickshaw puller and pushcart holder also uses mobile phones. So at the time it was quite different. Sorting through the coins, I was still unfamiliar, small and lighter than shillings, heavier, and students, shillings, you know, in Britain, in the UK, pounds are used, but in the USA, dollars are used. So this is also one of the differences. Heavier and brighter than paisas. Paisas are used sub-currency in India. How many paisa are there in 1 rupee? Obviously 100 paisa. In our olden times, at the time, we also used to learn like that. Okay. Who is speaking? When I made a call, I got a response. I was asked, who is speaking? A woman demanded from the other side, and her voice was bold and clamorous. So I got a bit confused. Yes, good afternoon, ma'am. Here we say ma'am, but over there we say madam. Madam. In France, madame. Okay. Sir, and in France, monsieur. Her voice was bold and clamorous, and good afternoon, madam. I am calling about the room for rent. Howard or Tech? She just demanded to know about me. I beg your pardon? Means I couldn't get, sorry ma'am, I couldn't get what you mean by Howard or Tech. Are you from Howard University or Technology Institute? Gathering that Tech referred to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, I replied, I work at Davy Library, adding tentatively at Tech, and then said, yeah, I am not from Howard, but I am Tech, means MIT. I was given an address and an appointment for 7 o'clock that evening, 30 minutes before the hour, because he was in crying need of that room. That's why 30 minutes before the given time means appointment. This writer went over there before 30 minutes before the hour. I set out my guidebook in my pocket, my breath fresh with Listerine, means I just cleaned my mouth with Listerine, okay, mouth freshener. So I turned down a street shaded with trees perpendicular to Massachusetts Avenue, and stray blades of grass poked between the cracks of the footpath. Some stray grass was there, and in spite of the heat, I wore a coat and a tie. Regarding the event, actually I just wanted to look sober, that's why I was wearing this coat. It was summertime, it was actually hot, weather was hot, but still I was wearing that coat. So even as I would any other interview, I was mentally prepared as if I was just trying to face an interview. I had never lived in the home of a person who was not Indian. This was my first time. That's why I was feeling a little bit hesitant also. The house, surrounded by a chain link fence, was off-white with dark brown trim. Unlike the stucco row house I had lived in London, this house, fully detached, was covered with wooded shingles, means some pieces of stones, mounds, right, with a tangle of forsythia bushes, a kind of flower bushes were there plastered against the front and sides. When I pressed the calling bell, the woman, means doorbell was there, the woman with whom I had spoken on the phone hollered from what seemed to be just the other side of the door, 1 minute please. I was responded like this. Several minutes later, the door was opened by a tiny, extremely old woman. A mass of snowy hair was arranged. Snowy hair means she was quite old, that's why all her hair was white, like a small sack on top of her head. As I stepped into the house, she sat down on a wooden bench positioned at the bottom of a narrow carpeted staircase. Once she was settled on the bench, in a small pool of light, she peered up at me with undivided attention. Now she looked at me. She gave attention to me. She wore a long black skirt that spread like a stiff tent to the floor. Actually quite long skirt she was wearing, and a starched white shirt edged with ruffles, means some plates are there on both sides and they are used in coats in India. Okay, ruffles at the throat and cuffs. Her hands folded together in a lap had long pallid fingers, means dull and glowless fingers, means she was old, that's why pallid fingers. Were swollen knuckles, means these joints of her fingers, and tough yellow nails Age had battered her, spoiled her features, so that means she was quite old, that she almost resembled a man, with sharp shrunken eyes and prominent creases on either side on her nose. Her lips, chapped and faded, had nearly disappeared, and her eyebrows were missing altogether, means entirely. Nevertheless, she looked fierce. So this is the appearance. You may be asked, write the character sketch or mention how Mrs. Croft looked like. So this is her appearance in this paragraph. Okay. Look up, she commanded. She shouted even though I stood only a few feet away. Fasten the chain and firmly press that button on the knob. This is the first thing you shall do when you enter. Is that clear? Now she has started telling the writer how he was supposed to behave while being in the house, means at the entry. I locked the door as directed and examined the house. Next to the bench on which the woman sat was a small round table, its legs fully concealed, means covered, much like the woman's, means the legs of woman's legs were covered by a skirt. Exactly in the same way the legs of this table were also fully covered. Concealed means covered or hidden by a skirt of lace. The table had a lamp, a transistor radio, a leather change purse with a silver clasp, and a telephone. A thick wooden can coated with a layer of dust was propped against one side. There was a parlor to my right, light with bookcases and filled with shabby claw-footed furniture. This is how the room was looking like, means interior of the house. In the corner of the parlor, I saw a grand piano with its top down, piled with papers. Piles of papers were there. The piano bench was missing. It seemed to be the one on which the woman was sitting, because she was already sitting on that bench. That's why there was no bench at the piano. Okay. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed 7 times. Chimed 7 times means now it was 7 o'clock. Okay. You are punctual. So half an hour before he had already got to the place, so he was known as punctual. You are punctual. It was a compliment. The woman proclaimed, I expect you shall be so with the rent. So means she is saying, as you are punctual of time, so I expect you to be punctual exactly in the same way for rent also, means you will be paying your rent well on time. I have a letter, madam. In my jacket pocket was a letter confirming my employment from MIT. He was showing his identity, that he was really working at MIT, which I had